better life.
So two things. Number one, there's been more blacks that have legally immigrated to this country in the last 30 years that were ever brought as slaves. That's number one. Number two, you still haven't answered the question.
I'm trying to.
Why?
It's a complicated answer.
Black people are only 13% of the population, yet they commit 55% of the murders. Why?
Because black people tend to be in lower economic statuses because of
Okay, no, this
CRT.
is fine. This is great.
Basically,
so you think that poverty equals crime?
I think that it's highly correlated, and there's a lot of studies.
This is where we disagree. What an insult to the working poor of this country.
So why do you think black people commit more crime?
Well, first of all, so how? Let me ask you a question as my answer.
Go on.
What percentage of blacks have a father around when they're raised?
I'm not sure.
20%.
So
80% of blacks do not have a stable father around. That is the most predictable way to end up in prison, end up as a murderer or a criminal. It's not a racism problem. It's not a white supremacy problem. It's a fact that black fathers impregnate women and they don't stay around with the women that they have impregnated.
Charlie Kirk, do you think that happens more in the black community compared to others?
It's threefold. Number one, we subsidize single motherhood. Number two, it's culture. It's accepted in the black community. And it shouldn't be.
Culture. Okay.
Don't take my word for it. Read Thomas Sowell's own book on how black culture allows single motherhood to continue into a nanny state type practice. 75% of black youth are raised out of father in the home. 75%. Is that a bigger problem or not a bigger problem than whiteness, white privilege, or white supremacy?
They should all be addressed and they're all related.
Okay, how is a white person to blame for the fact that 75% of blacks...
individual white people aren't at all to blame.
Okay, we agree.
Yeah.
So, but wouldn't it be more smart to be like, hey, that this is not about systemic racism. Stop impregnating your women and abandoning them?
Well, the way to incentivize not impregnating women and abandoning them is increasing access to healthcare, into housing, into everything that we know increases those outcomes for people.
So we have spent $30 trillion on the social welfare system since 1965. Black people are poorer, and the single motherhood went from 25% to now 75 to 80%. So the more money we've spent on black America, the less fathers we have, because black women divorced black men and married the government.
And do you think that's a problem inherent to black people?
No, it's not. It's happening now in white communities and Hispanic communities. It's just the worst in black America.
And why do you think that is?
Why is it the worst in black America? There's also a cultural problem. There is. And we have to be honest about it.
It's just that black people are
No, let me ask you a question.
Like
the average music that a black person in Compton is listening to, is it about contemplating the good, the true, and the beautiful, or is it about being a gangbanger and trying to get as much money and sleep with as many girls as you can?
I would actually like to think I would be offended by that.
Do you think the average black kid in Compton is listening to Beethoven or some sort of gangster rap music that glorifies gangster culture?
Silly question. Rap wasn't created to glorify gangster culture, so even though there is rap, I'm sure it's doing that.
You're dodging the question because...
Okay, I'm sure they're listening to rap.
Okay.
So you think rap music makes them think they're wrong?
Do you think the cultural expectation in black America is that you stay with the woman that you impregnate?
Within black communities? I can't speak on that.
Okay, the answer is no. It's not. It's not expected.
Okay, and do you think
hold on. In white Anglo-Saxon Protestant communities, it's a fact. Hold on. In upper middle class white communities...
Upper middle class? Say that part louder.
Yeah, upper middle class white Anglo-Saxon Protestant communities, if you impregnate a woman, you are looked down upon, and we do not think highly of you if you abandon the woman that you impregnate. That's a cultural difference. Has nothing to do with money. Has nothing to do with anything except norms. And the norms that have infected black America are destroying it from within. We need more fathers, not less. We need more dads around and less drag queen story hour. We need more young blacks to be able to look up to role models that are not leaving all the time and are not just saying, hey, I impregnated her, so be it. It's a toxin, and if we don't address that as the root cause, it's white supremacy, it's injustice, it's economics, we're dancing around the core of the issue.
I guess what I'm saying is, right, and you've perfectly actually laid out the dichotomy here, it is a fact, obviously, that black people disproportionately commit crime in this country, no one's arguing that, but you either believe that that is due to a complex intersection of social, economic, and like leftover effects from previous inequalities, or you believe that that is an inherent trait to the race.
No, I don't, because they weren't that way in the 1940s and 50s. Black America was one of the most peaceful, flourishing, fastest growing economically communities in the country. It's not genetic. You're trying to point something on me that I don't believe. Instead,
but then
Black
you do
America,
believe that it's not genetic, so you do think CRT is correct.
Hold on a second.
In
In the 1940s and 1950s, Black America was prosperous and was on pace to be richer and wealthier than white America. More dads were staying with the women that they were with. There was monogamy. What changed?
You're supporting my argument.
No, hold on. But answer the question. What changed? Did America get more racist since 1950?
I would argue there were more racist policies passed. There were more policies dedicated to white and communities and pushing them into poor housing and poor schools.
Wait a second. In the 1950s, Jackie Robinson had not even broken the color barrier. We had Jim Crow laws. We hadn't passed the Civil Rights Act, and we hadn't passed the Voting Rights Act. Yet blacks were better in the 1950s per capita than they are today. So we have become less racist. We've passed more anti-racist laws and given more stuff, and blacks are worse than they were 70 years ago.
Yeah.
Why?
So you're equating here institutional and social racism. Social racism was certainly worse in the 1950s, I'm sure everyone would agree, but institutional racism occurs when policies are passed against people.
Come on.
Which can increase over time, and it did.
You're not being intellectually honest. You know that. There was black-only drinking fountains in the 1950s. We don't have those anymore. Well, we're bringing them back with, black-only dormitories. But we had, for example, in the antebellum South in the 1950s, we had white-only communities, white by law. We got rid of that with the Civil Rights Act. But it didn't. Okay. Unfortunately, we look around. The numbers speak for themselves. Black youth are less likely to have fathers. They're not doing as well as far as economically. They commit more crime. So something changed. And our argument is what changed is three things. Number one, the imposition of the Great Society Project by Lyndon Baines Johnson of spending $30 trillion since 1960s on Section 8 housing, on welfare, on, all sorts where, as I said, that young black women married the government and they divorced young black men. And then we also have had, as Thomas Sowell and as Clarence Thomas would say, the soft bigotry of low expectations. And we have been afraid to get to the root of the issue or even speak about it because we don't want to be called a racist.
So what is imposing those low expectations?
Part of it is like white academic culture. I'll give you an example. I'm not saying you believe this, but Merrick Garland, the Attorney General of the United States, has come out and said having an ID to vote is racist. That is code for saying black people are too dumb to get a voter ID.
You're doing it again. You're simplifying a very nuanced, complex argument from the real people who are making it.
Is voter ID racist?
Obviously not, Charlie.
Okay, all right.
Do you want to know where the argument comes from? I can eloquently tell you.
Eloquently tell me why voter ID is racist.
Great. Certain policies in southern states were proposed that would, I think the quote from the person who decided the case was, with surgical precision, target the times where black people were voting and make it illegal or harder for them to get that to come at that time. And then they were targeting the type of ID that black voters had and making that specific type of ID illegal. That is racist.
Perfectly fair. How does that impact today, saying that every citizen, if you need an ID to vote, just that aside, why is it racist?
Because we have to have, obviously humans are making those decisions, right? And so if there is still institutional racism and people in power that are racist, we can't trust those institutions to make those decisions.
What institutional racism do we have in this country right now?
What you just named it.
What?
1350.
Okay, well,
affirmative action needs to happen because there is not that many minorities in these higher education institutions.
Okay, so you're being clear, which is then you lower standards.
No.
Affirmative action always does. Affirmative action lowers standards by definition.
I'm saying why affirmative action was introduced. I'm not arguing for it.
Were you asking me why it was introduced, or?
No, I'm saying you agree that's why it was introduced.
Well, I agree why it was. I don't think it ever should have been, but yes.
Right, but there is institutional inequality, yes?
Well, I wouldn't even use the word inequality. I don't love looking at it that way, but of course, white people generally are richer than black people in this country.
Richer and more represented in politics and schools, yes?
Somewhat yes and no.
Why do you think that is, Charlie?
Well, hold on a second. Let's ask a question here. Represented how? So,
look at Congressman.
So, hold on a second. Are white people represented fairly in the National Basketball Association?
Who cares? What political power does the
we're all
national...
about fair representation.
Listen.
I think that it should, by law, half of the NBA should be white.
Great, fine.
And the product would suck.
Lobby for it.
Because blacks are much better at basketball than we whites are.
What political power does the NBA have?
A lot, actually. The NBA reaches millions of people every day. They have slogans that people internalize. In fact, if the NBA had no political power, why would they have to wear Black Lives Matter on all their jerseys? Why would politicians try to get their endorsements all the time? The NBA is more powerful than Congress in some ways of shaping the minds.
It's your turn to be academically dishonest.
Hold on a second. No. But if you want fair representation, just to be clear, then why would you not be against whites, by law, being half of the National Basketball Association? Right now, black people make up 88% of the NBA.
Doing great. Who cares?
No,
I don't care. I'm saying,
okay.
Great. So here's my point.
All right, fine. I have a shot, everybody.
Please listen.
I could play for the Lakers.
I hope. Do it, Charlie. I'll come to your games. I'll do it.
The point is this, is that merit should triumph over all of it.
Which is awesome. Okay, so merit should triumph. We agree.
Okay.
Okay, Charlie, do you think black people are not as smart or competent as white people? Perfect.
No.
So they should, in theory, then, be equally represented in positions of power.
So, have you ever read Discrimination and Disparities by Thomas Sowell?
Do you only read Thomas Sowell? You've quoted him like 3 times. I haven't read that.
No, I read a lot more than Thomas Sowell, but I'm happy to. Thomas Sowell's the only intellectual with the courage to go after like these core issues of why Black America has fallen behind and why no one actually has studied it. So let's just get a great example. When you don't have a father in the home, the amount of words that a child hears goes down by 60 to 70%. The amount of words that a child, I don't know if you're a mother or not, or plan to be. Okay, no, just it's an important point. The amount of words that an 18-month-year-old hears is highly predictive of IQ, verbal development. Okay, so that's simple. When you don't have a dad in the home, the mom is overwhelmed, and there's just less interaction with the child.
That's all fine.
Okay, so we agree. I'm just saying that's not because of racism.
That's true.
No, that's fine.
That's good.
No, she, I know what you meant. But you have a father in the home. All of a sudden, they hear thousands of more words a day, and they're like way further ahead of a single mother raising a child. That's not racism.
Okay, so dads are good. Yes, great.
Okay,
but my question
I'm saying dads actually answer most of the questions that you might have about why Black America is falling behind.
Okay, but
because their dads don't stay around, and
I'm trying to sort of get you to reconcile your own beliefs. And if that's true, which is fine, that's true. We can say that's true. You either believe that has social and economic causes, or you believe that, black culture is just worse.
No,
and there isn't another thing to think.
No, I was very clear. Right now, black culture is being held captive by influences, songs, and role models. I mean, Nicki Minaj, Cardi B.
Okay, Nicki Minaj is causing dads to leave the home.
Hold on, I don't think that's a good role model for 18-year-old black girls. I don't think that songs that are talking about, like, glorifying wet female genitalia is exactly, I don't know which one wrote that song. Which one was it?
I think it was Ben Shapiro.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. But by the way, the role models in the 1940s and 50s for Black America were completely different.
So it is a representation issue.
Hold on a second, not representation. It's who do you get your art from? It's what values are they putting forward? It's the question of every day, for example, more times than not, black politicians will lament the condition of America. It's systemically racist. It's terrible. What does that do to a 14-year-old black kid if you just find that, if you hear that everything is rigged against you? Instead, they should be saying, hey, there might be some barriers, but if you believe in yourself enough, you can achieve in this country. It creates a form of social conditioning of low expectations, and that's not my argument. You know whose argument that is? Barack Obama's.
I don't necessarily agree with everything you said either, man.
Barack Obama said, number one, we need more fathers in the home. This is when Barack Obama
Obama's a liberal. I don't care what he's got to say.
Okay, but Barack Obama, then secondly, he said that we can't keep telling our black youth that you can't succeed in this country. Anybody can succeed in this country. And Obama was right when he said that. Obama was correct when he said that we need to change the story we're telling Black America.
Which is fine. I've never heard any teacher look at a black person and say, oh, you can't succeed because of racism.
Hold on a second. But what is the embedded message of all the propaganda saying it's systemically racist, you're going to run into racist employers, that they're going to discriminate against you? It creates this heaviness of why even try.
By the time college students get to college, they've experienced all that. They don't need to be told.
You think that I'm curious. You think that that the average black student at this university experiences like active daily racism? I'd be curious.
I have to ask.
Okay, I don't know. Maybe it's true. Maybe it's as bad as it was in the antebellum South. So.
I'm not saying that, obviously.
Okay.
I did say social racism improved. I'm saying institutional racism is still present, and that's what's causing lower outcomes for minority communities.
Do you think the reason why only 20 to 25%, it depends, we don't know the number, it's just a range per year.
Sure.
So 1 in 4 of black youth have a stable father around. What would you just say is the big, why is that the reason?
A complex intersection of social and economic reasons, which are outlined in CRT.
Okay. Thank you for the dialogue. Thank you.
Okay.
How do you feel about like the current state of the economy and this whole theory of like immaculate